Welcome back, everyone, to Spiritual Talk TV. I'm your host, Paul Bannister, and we have another fantastic guest. But before we go too far into our interview, don't forget to like and subscribe, the little subscribe button there. If you like what we do, we'd appreciate your support. Anyway, back to the interview. Tonight we have another fantastic guest. We have Angela Foster, teacher, medium, and probably most importantly, grandmother. Welcome, Angela. Thank you for joining us this evening on Spiritual Talk.
Thank you, Paul. It's lovely to be with you. Thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, absolute pleasure. And we met recently with another gentleman who was hosting a service, and I was so impressed with your philosophy. But you do multiple roles within mediumship, but your most important is teaching. Can you talk a little bit about your passion around teaching first?
Well, I've always had an interest. In fact, even as a child, I'd be there helping my younger sister when she had periods at home from being sick. But it has followed me throughout my career. I had 30 years as a podiatrist, for example, and I got involved in teaching there. And yes, teaching is a very natural part of who I am. So it's not surprising that having now taken a more formal qualification in teaching, which would be equivalent to the second year of a degree, that level 5 it's called, that I would now use it for mediumship. And I'm probably one of the few people that actually has been trained at this level to teach mediumship. Wow. As my specialist subject, which raised a few eyebrows.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Have you had any awkward questions or people tentatively asking you, or any kind of negativity around the subject matter?
No, because obviously people are. Do you mean as students or people
students towards
out
yourself?
there in the big wide world?
Yeah. In terms.
No, because I tend to. My market tends to be quite closed, as you know. I'm sure you found the same. So those who are seeking education will be drawn to it by spirit, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good that you have that passion, because so many people go down a particular way of learning. There is obviously the college, the AFC, but you've taken it from a slightly different perspective because of your passion and belief within what you're teaching. I love that. How is that going to look for you? If I was a student, say...
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I have done the route through the Spiritual Social Union, but what I wanted to do, rather than just be a medium teaching mediumship, I wanted to be a teacher teaching mediumship, because I feel that the discipline involved in presenting a class, in getting a lesson plan together, in motivating your students, has run a very well-run route in the teaching profession. So if I can combine that discipline of being a qualified teacher with my knowledge and experience of mediumship, which covers, I suppose, about 15 years now, that would be a really good way forward of introducing and developing mediums coming through the system, if you like.
Yeah.
And also, none of us should ever be satisfied with where we're at. Many mediums believe that once they've got the title, it all stops there. And it doesn't.
I love that, because self-development is such an important aspect of mediumship, and it doesn't matter. Do you believe then there's a kind of like an ego trap with mediums, if that makes sense, that we get stuck in our ways?
I think because there isn't any formal route for most mediums to encourage them for further development. Those who wish to go that route can seek it out with the SNU and other similar organisations, but most won't have access to that. And then, unfortunately, we do not always have good examples of mediums practising, and therefore we don't know what should be expected of us if we're actually creating the right environment and developing ourselves personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me personally, education is important. I've been in and around mediumship most of my life, but there's always that, I mean, in teaching as well, because you do teach privately as well. And I guess a lot of
Um,
students,
yes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of students that get to a certain point in their development and they kind of come up against plateaus where they get a little bit stuck. Do you find that a lot with mediums that come to you?
Yes, and another big factor too is the imposter syndrome, which often sits on mediums.
Yeah,
If there isn't the imposter syndrome, there is an ego issue, and many mediums will suffer from one or the other. And the imposter syndrome can very much block a medium's development. So if we don't make a good foundation and create the right environment, then when we do have those blocks, we really don't know how to work through them.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, and that's certainly something. Because the way the camera's set up, it actually goes on to you. But as soon as you said the imposter syndrome, I started to smile. It's exactly what I've had. I've had times when I felt, I've doubted myself. This doesn't feel like it's me. Is there some simple, ways of getting through that? You could help people with that, or
I think the most important thing is to recognize that if there's going to be a block, it's going to be us.
yeah,
And the other thing is to be kind to yourself, because let's face it, life does get in the way. We are expected to be living a life. And very often we try and be superhuman on so many levels, which is why I introduced myself as well as a grandma,
yeah,
because I do help with my the 5 grandchildren. So we have to recognize that there is a time and a place, and we cannot be all to everyone. And if we're not kind to ourselves, then we will find that one or other areas of our lives will suffer.
yeah,
And very often it's those areas which we're most passionate about. So if, as a medium, you'll think that you have to perform 10 times a night, and you don't. And we need time out. I always describe it a bit like a plane coming to rest.
yeah,
That if you don't come to rest, if you don't fill up your tanks again, if you don't get rid of what you don't need, you then aren't ready for the next journey. So we have to consolidate at those points. It might be with extra training, it might be watching other great mediums, it might be reading, it might, most importantly, be actually connecting with your guides by meditation, by self-reflection. So there's a lot we can do to actually cement that foundation to make sure that when things are a little bit wobbly, we have the resources to deal with them.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the self-reflection process is always a good a process indeed. I know I kind of went straight off into your teaching aspects of what you do. Can we talk also a little bit, Angela, how you started to become a medium? How did you know you was a medium?
Okay, well, it's a bit like waking up in the morning, isn't it? Some people wake up bright and alert and are ready to throw everything at the day, and others take a little bit longer to sort of wake up and go, oh, what's happening here? And I did not realize that I had an ability as a child. I came from a good Catholic background. I went to Mass on Sunday. This happened as a gradual process, just by an awakening. And in fact, so gently that it never seemed uncomfortable, it never seemed strained, it never seemed outside my ability to actually inquire. And all I ever wanted in this process was, once I realized I started to have a skill, an awareness of a skill, was that to find a safe place to practice it and to learn more about it. And that was my only request to the spirit world. And also that it would work within my family, because I was not going to suddenly take off and spend 3 years in a retreat in Nepal. So whatever the spirit world wanted to involve me in, it had to be within a safe environment that fitted in with the family dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember we interviewed Penny Francis, and Penny said she was told to go, she was in Australia. Bear in mind, she was a single lady, and she was told to fly to England. Now that takes, that just, do you believe you do set your boundaries with the spirit world? Or do you think,
You
yeah,
must, absolutely.
yes, and that's kind of where I can get a little bit confused, and so because I just think the intelligence of spirit knows us, it knows our journey, but I do wonder. I remember, I think it was the lovely Bill Hughes who said to me once, "Tell spirit how you want to work." How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. I mean, they know what we're capable of. It's a bit like as a child with a parent, or a parent with a child. You know that child is a genius. because you've seen evidence of it. But you wouldn't push that child to be outside and to develop a skill out at a rate that wasn't comfortable for them.
Yeah.
And I absolutely feel that you should put boundaries at everything. We have free will, free won't, free can't, free shan't.
Yeah.
It may not be appropriate that we follow this development at the same rate throughout our lives. We have children, we have a busy workload, we may have health issues. And the spirit world are also intelligent to know when they need to back off, but they are so keen to have a voice, so keen to involve anyone who will listen and who will actually actively be involved, that sometimes they can lose sight of the fact that we actually can say yay, nay, or possibly later.
But is that about self-persecution complex in terms of, oh, if I don't do this, they're not going to work with me anymore? I've heard people, that term, the leaky medium, where people start going around giving messages when they're in Sainsbury's, especially in the early days when you first develop.
That's all about discipline. That's all about understanding the craft. If you don't have the right framework and try and become that platform medium too soon, you don't have listened to good teachers, you don't have sat in circle, you don't have spent time with your guides and your spirit team, then yes, you won't know. You won't have the discipline to be able to say, this is appropriate for me now, and work best within it. We don't go to work when we've got a temperature of 103.
No.
When, there's water pouring in through the house, when maybe a sick relative is sitting there waiting, okay, I'm going to be descriptive, waiting to be changed, and say, right, I'm going to go to the shops now. You do what is necessary at that moment in time, and then you can come back to it in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, that's a great answer. The other thing I wanted to ask you and talk about was about fear within mediumship. And I think it's really important to dispel myths. In terms of people that you've worked with or your own personal story, have you come across that?
Oh, of course. We have fear of the audience. You have fear of your own voice. You have fear of forgetting something. You have fear of not being liked. You have fear of rejection. I mean, these fears are very natural and they will follow us through mediumship as they do in our life. But again, if you trust, if you have had that connection with spirit to say, okay, not such a good evening tonight, but I will learn from this. If you understand that this is a team process, but you are the captain of the ship at that moment in time, and sometimes the captain gets it wrong. So absolutely, you will have everything come into mind.
Yeah.
Part of the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. What about fear of spirit themselves? People have this, Hollywood has played a great part in creating fear in the connection of what we're doing in terms of bringing messages through.
That's a really good question. And I often see this on Facebook. To be honest, I believe that you draw those to you who may not be so desirable if that's what you're like as a character and as an individual.
Yeah.
If you believe in a loving relationship with your spirit guides, for example, we choose not to have friends who won't do us any good.
Yeah.
We would much rather be in company of those who are going to uplift us and to support us. And this is like the spirit world. Some people talk about, I have a gatekeeper who keeps the bad things at bay. Or I use a ritual in my life in order to make sure. I don't believe in any of that. I don't believe that this gift is given to us to be fearful of it.
Yeah.
We are taught how to be fearful by mainstream religion. That's not how I want to have my relationship with spirit.
Yeah. So as a Catholic, your views in terms of your spirituality have changed with your mediumship development, or are they very similar? Is there a similarity? Can you draw from some aspects of the faith?
Okay. There is this wonderful saying that you're either a Catholic.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a big
Sorry.
question to throw at you. I'm so sorry. I should have prepared you for that one,
No,
shouldn't
it's all right. I've thought about this. It's
I? Okay.
not a problem. There is
Okay.
this wonderful saying that you're a Catholic, a non-Catholic, or a lapsed Catholic. There's no other breed. So it can never totally leave you in one form or the other. But I remember when my father died, and he was going to become a Catholic priest and didn't because of the Spanish Civil War, 1937, I think it was, that brought all the English students home because he was training in Spain. And one of the first things he said to me after he died, I could feel him throwing open his arms and saying, "This is much bigger than you can possibly believe. Get rid of the middleman."
Wow.
Now, the middleman was actually the Catholic Church. It is very easy for us to put ourselves in a bubble. And some religions, unfortunately, have this reputation where we think we need different layers of leadership in order for us to attain and to reach our spirituality.
Yeah.
I am more and more becoming convinced that this is not the case, that the purest form of a relationship as spirit being spirit, or as spirit being human, is to access it directly without, dare I say, contamination.
Yes,
Would that be too strong a
absolutely.
word?
No, I'm on board with this because from my own experience, but this interview isn't about me. This is about you. And it's really interesting that we have a similar concepts, and I had a realization recently that the middleman is, get them out the way. It is your personal, and that leads me on to my next question. It's your personal relationship with whatever you see the divine as being, or whatever your belief system is, that's more important than having someone tell you how you should or what you should not believe in. For you though, Angela, I was just going to follow that on with about people forget about developing self, know thyself, working with thyself.
Mm.
Did you find that working with yourself was a natural part of your mediumship, that you unfolded as much as your mediumship did? Or was it like for me personally, I found myself liking art, which has never came into my sphere of my reality at all. And there I was visiting art galleries and doing other things that opened my heart. Did you find you had similar experiences?
This is very interesting. I probably have developed myself personally much more since I actually retired as a podiatrist just before COVID, and where there was a time to develop it, and then the teaching, the opportunities for teaching, actually, interestingly, developed quite naturally. I spoke with the right people, opportunities arose, courses became available to me. I had the time to follow them. So for me, my personal development has been in sharing my understanding and developing the skills of other mediums. I'm not talking about beginners here.
Yeah.
I'd much rather work with those that have an understanding, because that is the cohort that so often gets neglected.
Yeah.
There is so much out there for beginners. But my feeling is that there is so much that we can, and for me, it's a process that helps me as well. It's not just me being the teacher, it's student-led as well.
Yeah.
So that has been the most amazing journey, to be able to see that I actually can fulfill this teaching role in an area that really has value and means so much to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly helps. It really does help. And also, while you're here, I love always talking about guides. And I'd love to get your experience with working with your guides and how you connected with guides, and how when you realized they were there. Because a lot of people go, how do I connect with my guides? I have no idea where to start. For you, how was that process?
I do not feel that they have individual identities, that this is often something that we create in order to pigeonhole them.
Yeah.
I believe that there are, as in life, many people who comes in our lives to act as signposts, and I have found this. I have been so fortunate with people. Even my mother was a signpost. Much as she drove me absolutely crazy, she was a signpost to my career. I had to thank her for that, but she did drive me crazy in other ways. But the relationship with spirit isn't about individuals. It's about a team Angela. And whoever they are up there, I am very grateful that they're looking out for me and that they open up opportunities. They also stop me doing things that I shouldn't be doing, where I find that roots or areas that, because I'm not very good at giving up on something. I'm not very good at saying, okay, I've done that, move on. I really had to be kicked out of the nest. And I have found that often it's a bit tough love. They will block something I'm doing in order to create another opportunity, because they know jolly well that I won't give up easily. And although sometimes I think, could you be a bit more gentle about this, please? Just would be kind if you just, let me off the hook a little bit easily because I'm suffering. They know that that's probably the only way. So I cannot say I have a Native American Indian, or occasionally I've been aware of shadowy figures, but I just regard it as a team that's working with me for a specific purpose, and I feel very humbled by that. So I'm not going to start humanizing them in order to make them fit my idea of what signpost should be.
Because there is a tendency for people, and I guess they need it as a bit of a crutch that they know who they have with them in terms of. So I know people, and I know they're quite nervous, have a bit of a nervous disposition, but their guides will be someone like Jesus or someone really famous that we can all relate to. But I think it's more about holding on to that. No, we're being nurtured, we're being walked through what our development, and we need that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is we struggle with human concepts. I think can block the energy of the connection to the spirit world. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. And I think that as soon as we start giving them a personality, we then start pulling back on what is possible, because we are talking about a different language, a different understanding. We're talking about the use of emotion that often the words just fail to describe how amazing the experience is. But as soon as we start saying, well, that's a man with a beard, or that's Jesus, or that's Buddha, we are really foreshortening our understanding, the potential, because we are becoming, what's the word I'm looking for? Distracted by things which aren't important.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's really important that we recognize that. But again, for some people, that's about a journey. So again, I love asking this question. If you could go back 20, 30 years at the start of your journey, what would you say to yourself now? Because I love that question.
What would I say? I would say always be aware of opportunities which present themselves, that they may be time limited, they won't be there forever, that if you choose not to follow something through, that is your choice.
Yeah.
It may come back in a different form, a more palatable form for you to accept. But be curious.
Yeah.
Be open, be interested, and just be amazed at what is possible that may take you out of your comfort zone, but not in order to frighten you or to disturb you or just to be wonderful. And if you have that sort of childlike attitude of being in a candy shop, then no fears, no previous feelings, nothing will come in the way of opportunities which can open themselves up for you.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to touch back on to the faith. Did you have a faith as a child in God? Did that stand in your way in your development, or was it a help?
Well, it has been a bit of a problem because, the faith I was brought up in had a very external God. It had, that was sort of separate from us, really, and again encouraged by the way that we were taught it, by this pecking order. And I struggle with that, and only because I know that my father was trying to sell me something different,
Yeah.
and because I have still no real concept of what the divine power might be, because I haven't experienced, no, not experienced, because, okay, I'm going to say it. Somebody once said to me, a medium, nobody ever comes back from the spirit world saying they had a great chat with God. So my feeling is, and I'm married to an agnostic atheist, who is a scientist. I don't know what he is, but and we have some fascinating discussions. But I haven't yet rested on a persona that I actually find comfortable to say that is God.
Yeah.
That's what God is. Apart from knowing that there is something amazing about life, a potential that if you break the rules of the universe, the divine law or whatever, it comes back to bite you. That there is a good way of behaving and there is a not so good way of behaving.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Like looking for that inner connection and asking that question helps us to move. I know it's a whole philosophy around the I am. There's a lot of people that use that to help them. But for a lot of people, they kind of get stuck in that rut. It's trying to not to conceptualize everything. And that's a real difficult mental block because as human beings, we try to conceptualize everything. For example, people talk about the Akashic records, and I think it was Edgar Cayce that did the first Akashic records readings, where he would go into the library, the Great Hall of Learning, where he would read someone's book. Now, wonderful. Is that a human concept, or was he just reading the soul?
I'll tell you, I can give you a bit of an answer about that. My husband, many years ago, actually invented something. It wasn't very major. I think it was a gadget for an electric drill, and like a plumb line thing that was attached to the drill.
Yeah.
And he didn't do anything with it. 6 months later, it was on the market. Now, I believe that the Akashic records may be a form or like conceptualized that we've given to it.
Yeah.
But in fact, there is this access to things that are beyond our understanding. And we like to put labels and tags on things because then it's comfortable, because that's how, we're all covered in labels. We grow up from the moment we're born and we have labels added to us left, right and centre. And that's how we're defined by labels, as everything else in this world, because it's convenient. So you're right in saying, for me, I cannot say what I don't know about. That's one thing I've learnt.
Yeah.
I know about spirit. I know it's intelligent. I've had more than one example of spirit intervening, giving me relevant information about a legal case, for example, that to show that we're not just retrieving memories. So that is the only example I can give about God. I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So therefore, I can't say to other people, this is how you should worship, this is what you should believe in, because my experience doesn't conceptualize sufficiently for being able to guarantee that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Being an open mind is probably the best thing we can do when we approach this type of work. And that leads me on nicely to my next question. I saw an interview recently you did with the lovely Laurie down in Poole, and you were talking about, and I think this is really important because you're one of the first that I know of to be talking about this. And I know it's a thing where the responsibility of the person receiving a message from a medium. Now, can we just look at that in terms of, because I know you're quite passionate about that subject, in terms of,
absolutely.
and a lot of people's ears will prick up because people have expectations of a medium. And I think it's really important that we don't want to deflate people by putting kind of structure in for them, but there is a responsibility. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Angela, please?
Yes, I had to think very carefully about what I was going to teach. And one of the areas that I feel that is left sadly lacking is how the recipient should respond.
Yeah.
We come in as mediums, all the chairs do, with a 2-minute script, right? We want you to say yes, no, maybe, don't feed the medium, don't do this,
Yeah.
do that. And then we expect them to get it right. That's just not enough. The recipient is an integral part of the communication with the spirit world. And often, I mean, it's often the mediums who are the worst recipients, and we have to admit that, but that's only because we should know better.
Yeah.
But I do feel that there is a big hole, and it does an injustice to the recipient, and also to the value of the message we're giving by not showing them just what is best practice in order for them to get the best experience and for others listening in to feel that this is truly a testament that life continues.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of the medium's responsibility around that, now I've heard many mediums work in different ways. Now, what would you say would be a good guideline for a medium to start when he's working on platform? Would you ask, is anyone seen a medium work before? What do you think, would help mediums create the right atmosphere is what I'm trying to say.
It depends the function. I mean, if you're going into a private reading where it's just a one-on-one with the medium and the recipient, and you might be covering topics which are much more sensitive, you have to allow the recipient to have their own boundaries and to understand that they can have boundaries. But for me on platform, it's just making them realize that we are not engaging in a communication with them direct, that we are trying to, it's like having somebody sitting on our shoulder. We can't listen to what they're saying to us if the recipient is trying to engage in conversation. And so this is probably the area which is most important, but also to understand that this isn't always just about this skimming approach by mediums to say, I've got a granny here, she died of a heart attack, she had 5 children, she worked in an office. And then this skimming approach, and I think we've probably talked about this before, but this skimming approach does not prove anything except that they have got a non-personal relationship that cannot create the emotion, which is the language of spirit.
Yes.
So by allowing that emotion, as what was Laurie talked about, moving from pieces of information to a conversation. So we've got to create a conversation where we are the voice piece. Then you can see and feel that the recipient is engaging. So it's by showing them what is possible when they understand what their part is in the process. Is that what you were?
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I so much I want to talk to you about, Angela. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to keep bombarding you with these questions. You have
carry on. It's fine.
Well, you have such a depth of knowledge. It's such a privilege to talk to you. Now, I want to talk about modern mediumship and how it compares with our forebears, but I also want to talk about how mediums bring in that emotion. I call it the holy grail moment, when the person is sitting before you and it's not actually like you said, mum's here, she's got this, she had that, she passed with this. It's that, oh my God, I can feel my mum. And you feel that emotion. Now, last night I did a service online, and like the one where I met you recently in Jeffrey's service, you did a wonderful address. And I was quite lucky. I did a really I felt it was quite a good address, but the difference that made with the energy and the messages that were coming through from me, I was also hearing that love coming through from the spirit world into my own heart, which I found as a guy I struggle with sometimes. I don't go around saying everyone I want to hug the world and love you, but you could feel that love, and I could then express that love. There's a couple of questions leading off from this, but do you think the philosophy creates that better energy to create a deeper connection to the spirit world?
Philosophy is tremendously important because philosophy will affect everybody in the congregation, whereas the mediumship may only have a one-to-one relationship.
Yeah.
And philosophy also, if it touches you, should be able to help you through life,
Yeah.
should be able to help you through the next day, should be able to answer some questions that you have that you're thinking about. The responsibility for, I feel that many mediums tend to leave philosophy to one side. They're frightened by it.
Yes.
They don't feel they've got the communication skills to be able to share it. But with the right preparation, even the greatest speeches have been prepared. Now, whether or not you decide to use inspiration totally, or whether you decide to actually have a skeleton plan, which is what I favour, depends on your skill set.
Yeah.
I would recommend everybody start off with a skeleton plan. But in doing so, you then engage with the emotion that's coming from the spirit world. Philosophy is mediumship. Healing is mediumship. We think of mediumship as only the communication. So you're absolutely right. That would have put you in a place to then really connect with the spirit world and for them to come in and listen to what you're saying. And have you noticed how often the philosophy, the music which is chosen by the chair, and the tone of the messages are so often linked?
It was as well.
Now,
The
why
lady
wouldn't
sung after me, and it linked into it was amazing. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
But that then leads me into, because I served a church recently where I did philosophy, and the gentleman, and it was an SNU church, and the guy said to me, and I'm not going to name names because it's pointless, but he said, we rarely have mediums now that do philosophy.
Yeah.
They'll
Yes,
just,
agree with you.
and they go straight into mediumship. But then how do they get into their power? I kind of struggle with that word power because it has other implications. But how do we get into that love and that connection, that healing experience that we have with philosophy, if we're not going to try to explore that? But then there's another problem off of that. Do you feel, I'm just going to say it, Angela, have we become really lazy? Are we really lazy as mediums
Oh,
today?
yes. No, absolutely agree with you. You know, you think, oh, well, I'll just go out there and say something. There's no personal responsibility, which I favourite of the principles. In order to develop your mediumship at all levels, there has to be a level of personal responsibility. And, if we think that all we've got to be is a voice piece for the spirit world and they'll come out and they'll spout through us and we'll give the message and we can walk off again, spirit will desert us. That'll be the time when we're left on our own. They'll go, excuse me, this is not what we want from you. And to be honest, spiritualism and living life as a spiritualism is not just about delivering messages. It's about walking the walk as well as talking the talk.
Absolutely. Because I have wondered as well. I've seen, and again, not naming names, people have some real difficult experiences and challenges within their life, and they'll still get up and demonstrate. And I think, well, I'm not judging, and maybe they resonate with certain people at a certain level, but I don't know. I take my hat off to them for doing that. But my next, leading into that, really, my next question, modern mediumship. So therefore, we can, from what we've just said, say that modern mediumship isn't as good as our forebears. Would you agree with that?
I believe firmly that the mediums of old knew how to hone their craft. Gordon Higginson said, nobody should go on the platform until they're absolutely ready. He wouldn't allow any of his proteges onto platform working until they'd been doing circle work and development work for many years. Unfortunately, and especially with the internet explosion since COVID, I see so many people saying, oh, I'm just a new medium, but anybody who wants to book me an hour away from home, that's absolutely fine. Somebody should be getting them by the hand and going, no, absolutely not. You're not ready. This isn't just about, for example, picking up a bicycle and riding it on the nice flat ground.
Yeah.
We are going to encounter hills. We're going to encounter potholes. We're going to encounter everything that's going to be put in our way to show that we've got the skill set and the attention span to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And also, I have noticed, and I'm sure you've probably noticed it too, that at the beginning, Paul, everything seems really easy. If you try any of the skills out, suddenly it's like, oh gosh, it's like the first time you win on the lottery, and you think, well, that I did. We ran the first week, £10, first week ever. Well, that's simple. And then the spirit go, okay, I've been holding the stabilizers on the bike for you for a little while. Now I'm going to let you on your own.
Yeah.
And that's when we go, we're not coping. We think the skill has left us. No, it's just spirit world saying, okay, you have been shown what is possible, but we are going to stand back now and you're going to have to do the work. And most mediums, I would say 75% of mediums should not be performing on platform. They should be back in the development circles.
Yeah.
With an experienced medium guiding them.
Well, my weakness has always been around my own personal confidence. And I've always struggled. Now, I can give someone a good message and connection with spirit world, but I've always struggled with philosophy. And I don't mind sharing this. I am working on it hard. I've got someone with me who's very strict, but I need that kind of, I would call myself at times a little bit lazy when it came to philosophy, but I respond better. I've come from quite a competitive background where I coach football as well, but it's actually also taken me on a personal journey within learning and discovering philosophy for myself and how that's unfolded. And I started my journey with healing, but as a society, we do have a problem with everything is now. Everybody wants something now. They get the credit card out and they've got it. You know, well, my parents, when they first bought a house or moved into an accommodation, they had to literally sit on a deck chair and a cardboard box for a table. And they literally, each week, they went to the furniture shop and paid a little bit of money off each week for a table and chairs. And that's today. It doesn't happen today. And do you think that mindset has creeped into the way we live our lives, which equates to poor mediumship? Sorry, guys, I'm not having a rant, but I am quite passionate.
Have a rant, because this is being spoken about in churches when poor secretaries have to, or the booking secretary has to try and engage mediums. It's a big problem. You know,
it is a big problem. But then obviously we had the likes of Leslie Flint, who had an amazing network of home circles. So maybe we need to, rather than, like, I'm sitting here moaning and whinging, I'm sorry guys, I'm getting on my big horse and riding off into the sunset and moaning, but actually maybe we should be encouraging more people to sit in home circles. How does someone at home that, do you know what, I'd love to get a home circle, I'd love to do a development circle, or even just a simple awareness circle, how can they start? Any tips, Angela? Any ideas?
Absolutely. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. You know, go and find your local spiritualist church where there is a medium who is skilled and wishes to bring on the next generation. This isn't something that you say, well, the biggest thing I think we've seen is with people taking a course and then 2 days later they're running the course themselves. I mean, that infuriates me beyond measure, as you can. And this is the mentality, because we haven't taken that mentality of an apprenticeship from our working career into the skill of mediumship. We think that because it's spirit-led, that it isn't bound by the same rules and regulations. It is bound by the same rules and regulations. We still have to learn our apprenticeship in the same way. Yeah. This isn't one of those, you do a course and then you've learned it all and then you go out and do it, or else you teach it, which is even more criminal, to be honest.
I was going to say, so this will go out into the world. This will go out into the world, into South Africa, you know, anywhere in the world. We love you guys watching this. Now, we are very lucky in the UK that we still have quite a good church network of spiritualist churches around and centres within the UK. And we do have some worldwide, but they're quite small and they're quite few and far between. Even in America, I know mediums in America that struggle to do a Sunday service or to get experience. But how about people that are in you know, well, I try not to laugh at Norfolk. I'm in Norfolk, guys, and it can be a bit of a backwater out this way. There's not much going on around here. We have a few spiritual churches, but there is a high demand for people looking for development groups or even simple awareness groups. Would you encourage people just sitting together and being open-minded? I'm not asking them to come and start trancing, but would you encourage simple awareness groups for people?
This is a really good question. And but there's been an interesting phenomena over the last few years, and it may well have been led by the spirit world. The Spiritualist National Union have an online branch, the SNUI, and this was set up in 2008 to fulfill this need and to absolutely bring people together from all over the world who don't have the facility locally.
Yes.
Unfortunately, if you create your own circle with no formal medium to lead it, this is when you pick up bad habits, when you think it's totally acceptable, don't understand the link, the connection between being a psychic and being a medium, how people, can call themselves psychic mediums. I'm not quite sure because they're different skills. So not to say that one is better than the other, but, you have to understand the terminology. And unfortunately, if you get together in somebody's home and start to do a Ouija board, I belong to a beautiful circle locally many years ago. And we were doing a little bit of trance work, and we knew that one of the ladies was tilting the table like no one's business when we were doing physical phenomena. We could see her rocking it. It was, she would never have believed it. She didn't believe she was doing it. The rest of us knew what was happening. So the thing is, you do need experience to lead these groups. And to be honest, there is the SNUI, there are so many good teachers online at the moment. One teacher I have so much respect for in Canada, who leads wonderful online groups, is Andy Bing.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you know Andy. I have so much respect for him as a teacher. But there are other great, and the Arthur Findlay College now, since COVID, is doing so much more online.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, there are, even for communities which are not connected with people, as in Europe, as in countries where spiritualism isn't the flavour of the month, there are online opportunities. There was some very wonderful work done by a lady called Heidi Campbell about 10 years ago. And when I was writing about the history of the SNUI back in 2015, I looked up her work, and she has done a lot of studying in the States about the role of online churches online or online churches. And there is a difference between a church online and an online church. And she said that many young people coming into spiritualism now do not want bricks and mortar churches. They want to be able to access their religious beliefs within a home setting. So I don't think we any longer have the problem of isolation. I feel there are opportunities, and there are mediums reaching out to people who want to understand more without having to physically go into the churches, which is sad for the churches. I know this is not good news for the churches, but if you go into any church of any denomination, you will see that in fact it's not being honoured and respected by the young anymore, unless you go into one of the more evangelical environments. Unfortunately, we have to find other ways of reaching people, and I believe the internet is going to be it.
And that's a perfect caveat. Everything just seems to flow with my questions and what you're saying. I've just written down. Do you guys as teachers need to change the way you teach? And when you think of the old types of circles where people would sit in silence for an hour, waiting for inspiration, and that's all gone. That's all gone. Unless you've got a seriously dedicated group of people that understand how the mechanics of that works. The younger generation coming through, again, it's going to sound awful, maybe because they're spoiled. And I don't mean literally spoiled. I mean spoiled in terms of everything is so quick for them. So they just assume life is that way. So will spirit, do you think the intelligence of spirit will catch up with it? Well, it will change the way they work. The energies change around. And again, that word energy, but change around the way we work to help us to connect?
Oh, I think you've got it the wrong way around. I think they're the ones leading the revolution. I mean, if you think about, they pace the need. They've decided, for example, in the early days of spiritualism, we all went to great big halls. There were home circles galore. There was very physical phenomena that needed to bring people in to understand.
Yeah.
Now it's much more about mental mediumship and about philosophy. So the spirit world's leading this revolution. The thing is, people, if you show a desire, a need, if you have an understanding which is beginning to open up in this area, you will be found the right teacher. Absolutely believe that. So if people start saying, I have a need, not a want, but I have a need, that need will be answered. And I feel so much that the world has turned over since COVID, and it has opened up avenues. I mean, 5 years ago, there was little prospect of doing trance online.
Yeah.
It's too scary, too dangerous. Shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that. I regularly, twice a week, attend a small trance group.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't feel that I'm going to not be kept safe. That mentality, fear, does not enter my practice of spiritualism.
Yeah.
So I look for potential, and I feel that we are being given opportunities. If we wish to have them, they will be found for us, and the right teacher will present themselves.
That's a really interesting philosophy. I actually believe in that. So okay, that also extends out, because I want to talk about people coming for a reading and what people at home, because there'll be people listening to this that won't want to develop, but they're just interested in what we're saying. But then they have a need as well. They believe in there's something more than perception, that there is this place where we go to after death, and they want to connect with their loved ones. So they come to look for a reading. Now, there is a lot of, and I know within our community, there is a wide variety of people offering assistance in that way. But how can people make an informed and educated decision who's right for them? Who should I go and see? And I see it all the time going on Facebook, or anyone recommending this person, anyone who can I see to help me in this, It's a minefield for people, isn't it? And I've always... Sorry, Angela.
My first instinct was, go on.
No, I was just going to say, because the other thing I've noticed, we are, there's a lot. Norfolk isn't particularly a wealthy area, and another thing I've noticed that there is we're in difficult times financially in the UK. There's a lot of poverty, and I found suddenly there's a lot of mediums that popped up. And so discernment for people is quite hard to find someone that was genuinely going to give them what they need.
I feel that if people, you can talk more easily in this country, but you can also move this to online. If people will find mediums that they feel comfortable with, and you will then, but you may not get it right the first time. So you must not be frightened of saying, okay, I had a not a nice experience many years ago where I was in a local circle, and this teacher was actually isolating me from the rest of the group with the tasks that were being held. And okay, everybody, I want you to do this task, but Angela, I want you to do that one. Not because she felt I was fantastically brilliant, but quite the reverse. Now, I've got no problem with that. I haven't got an ego, but it was becoming blatantly obvious that I was being singled out, and I felt uncomfortable. I felt there was something not right. So I stopped going, and then I got the message back from another a student who was on the course saying, oh, this medium thought it was very odd and didn't know why you weren't coming. Well, because I didn't want to give her my money anymore to be told I was rubbish. This wasn't helping my confidence, and it wasn't actually helping me grow as a medium. So if the spirit world know that this is a side of you that you want and have the need to develop, again, you will be shown where to go. But do start off with recognized places of worship either online. I mean, there are plenty of churches who are running, who are on, who are. Let's see, remember I said to you a bit earlier, churches online or online churches, who are churches working online,
Yeah.
and that's a good start. People like Paul,
Yeah.
where they have a good, wonderful reputation as
Yeah.
as a church, have now gone into being a church online, not an online church. I do feel that many of the centres and groups that are currently on Facebook, for example, are like small home circles.
Yeah.
They are running like small home circles
Yeah.
with between 10 and 20 people. And you have to become discerning. Does that message bring you an emotional response?
Yes. Yeah.
You have to be discerning. If you're not in a position to be discerning, then maybe this journey isn't ready for you just yet.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. Yeah, absolutely. Angela, we've talked about so many subjects. We've kind of gone a bit of a scattergun approach because I've got
Oh, totally.
we only have a small a window really, and you've done so much. And I wanted to talk about, here we go, here comes another scattergun question. I wanted to talk about remote viewing because you're doing a course in Poole, aren't you? Or you've just done one. Can you talk about that
Just done one, yeah.
in the terms of how that fits in with mediumship?
Okay, well, it's very much a psychic skill. I don't take, when I'm teaching them, I need people to be aware that it will start off as a psychic skill. But there's no reason why your spirit team shouldn't come in and lead you through a remote viewing. It doesn't have to be solely psychic.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to allow your mind. Andy Bing always talks about the role of the imagination.
Yes.
Now that sounds like a bad thing because it sounds like you're creating that environment. But he says you have to have imagination in order to be partly, I suppose, a good medium, but also to be able to use your clairs, this clairvoyance, clairaudience, whatever, in order to lead you into that journey. So remote viewing is a bit of a fun occupation. We go into people's homes, for example, with permission, that we'll ask them, can we go into your living room or your sitting room? And also we've used it to find something that people have lost. It is not going into Area 51 in America. I couldn't ratify whether you were there or whether you were sitting on Saturn, in an environment like that. But I could tell you if you were describing things in my sitting room.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's just a bit of light relief. It's not serious. But it is fun.
But there is a serious side to it because, as you said, there is, your team can also take you for a remote view. How does that fit in terms of the difference? Can we recognize the difference between us doing a remote view and then suddenly our team coming in? And for instance, I did a message last night. I was doing an online service and the lady's mother took me into her house and showed me this awful paisley carpet in the hallway that her daughter was always complaining about. And it was, but in terms of, it was layered because it gave context to where she was. You knew you was at the mother's house, and it went through into the house, and there was other items that she was talking about that connected to her childhood, which I think is really important. So how do you recognize though when it's team and not yourself?
Well, first of all, you have to know the difference between working psychically and working mediumistically. That's the most important thing. But we also have to remember it would be very easy for me if I was spirit to say, right, I'm going to allow you to share a memory of me walking through that house, seeing that carpet, seeing the Royal Doulton on the sideboard, seeing the hole that the cat used to use in the kitchen. That is not remote viewing. That's me sharing a memory of a static memory of an event that I knew that the recipient and I would both know about. Unfortunately, there are certain skills and how we use them that until you've experienced them, you're not going to realize the very subtle differences in what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
So I would say to people, don't rush to say that every experience is remote viewing. It may just be that. I mean, I could say to you, if you were my medium and I was a spirit world, I had a car in the driveway and it had a blue carpet, and in the back I kept boxes because I would take stuff to the dump it on a regular basis. You might say, well, you're taking me physically to that car to see it, and it's not remote viewing.
Yeah.
It's in a way, it's being like me taking you on a video journey rather than a static picture. And in fact, I was asked this question at last weekend by a student, and I said, well, think of it as a video that's in real time,
Yeah.
and not a static picture of a series of memories, because that is not remote viewing. I
So
couldn't
when
think of
you
a
say
better way of
real time,
explaining it.
you mean more as of now, in this moment?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
That makes total sense. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that.
I'm glad he does, because I struggled to answer that question, thinking, where am I going to get the answer for that one?
Yeah,
But I
because
think it is. I think it's
what
got to
about
be real time.
information that is then? I mean, I had some information. I was being taken into the kitchen. This lady had, and I could see the kitchen. I could see the step down into the beautiful kitchen she had, and I was being shown round the kitchen. Now, is it the messenger giving me that message, or was he taking me there? That's where I get. And since he's been passed, he was talking about how the kitchen has been updated. And you haven't been looking after his fridge freezer because there's a problem with the door because she had to get that fixed. All of that kind of thing. Now, is that his memory, or is he showing me since he's been? Which is, I mean, the whole concept is amazing, isn't it? That they watch us, they come in and around us, they're aware of our lives. What a wonderful aspect of mediumship that is. But was it a memory or was it a remote view?
Well,
It's
it
a hard
obviously
one.
wasn't a memory, because it's current. And if they're aware of changes that are being made that they weren't actually physically there for, then one would have to assume that it's remote viewing in real time,
Yeah, because I get
led by the
confused with that.
spirit world.
Because I get confused with that. Because then, if he's aware of what's going on, is he just giving me his memory, or sorry, his awareness of what he knows is to be happening? If that makes sense. That wasn't good English, by the way, was it?
No, but I'll tell you a little example which might help. Many years ago, I was involved in a very unpleasant legal case professionally, and I was the bottom of the pecking order. But it was being pursued by a particularly unpleasant, very wealthy gentleman who felt that we'd stepped on his toes, and we hadn't at all. And one of the messages I got from a medium was that there was an issue about two apples. Now, I knew this came from my father. He was a Latin scholar, so I looked up the term two apples. And there is a term called res judicata,
Right.
which is basically somebody not accepting a legal resolution or a judgment, and coming in again and saying, no, I'm not going to accept that, I'm going to have another go. And that's the two apples. He wants his bread and eat it, basically, or wants his bread and buttered or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and I went to the solicitor and I said, could this be a case of res judicata? And the solicitor said, yes, it could well be. That day, I heard from one of the other lads involved in this who said, my solicitor mentioned that expression. Now, for me, that's real time.
That's brilliant.
That's absolutely real time.
Yeah.
And I knew my father was supporting me, saying, okay, this is what's happening now. If we can say that about viewing somebody's house, then it's got to be remote viewing, hasn't it?
Yeah, I agree.
Being there by the spirit world.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It is fantastic. It really is. Angela Foster, we have been going for just over an hour. Thank you so much. It's gone just like that. And I've still got loads more questions, but we'd love to get you back on in the future. We really would. But we can't thank you enough.
I love to speak to this.
It's absolutely. It's so, the problem is there's so many difficult aspects within mediumship and self-development that we could be here all day. But I know you've got a life to go and live, and I'll be here all day asking you questions. But thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And guys, don't forget, if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. And we'll be back very soon with another fantastic guest. But for now, thank you, Angela, and we'll see you all very soon. Take care. Bye bye.
And you. Bye for